You weren't born. Okay, of course you were born. This is Warhammer 40k. Your luck wasn't landing you as Jesus. You were born screaming, covered in blood, and probably already being judged by a servo skull with a clipboard. But that part where you got to be a person, that ended fast. Because someone looked at your orphaned, half-feral 13-year-old self and thought, yeah, let's give that kid acid spit and a rocket launcher. First, the tests, then the surgery, then the upgrades. They installed 19 organs. Not metaphorically, they literally opened you up and started adding them. One lets you eat poison, one lets you breathe in space, one lets you lick dirt and taste its feelings. Science. Then they stapled the black carapace into your spine, turning your body into a USB port for power armor. From that point on, you didn't wear armor, you were armor. If it itched, too bad. If it pinched, that's loyalty. They erased your name, called it purity. They erased your memories, called it devotion. Your personality, unnecessary variance. You got assigned to a legion, not chosen, assigned. To none other than the Ultramarines, the blue ones, the noble ones, the ones who print their battle plans on parchment and then light it on fire for extra purity. You didn't feel noble, you just felt heavy. You met your squad in a training cage. No names, just chain weapons and trauma. One of them hadn't blinked in 3 weeks, one quoted scripture in his sleep, one kept talking to his bolter like it was his dead twin. You learned fast, because asking questions got you reevaluated, and reevaluation meant getting stabbed and replaced by the next kid in line. You were told this was brotherhood. It mostly felt like structured emotional damage. They taught you how to fight before you learned how to eat slowly. They taught you how to chant before you understood half the words. And when your bones broke, good, now you could learn how to fight while healing. Eventually, you earned your first deployment. Great Crusade, they called it. Thousands of worlds reunited with the Imperium. Thousands of cultures that didn't want to be. You were told to bring unity. You brought a bolter and righteous indignation. Your first kill was a rebel who called the Emperor overrated. Your second was a child with a plasma gun and too much hope. You told yourself it was for the Imperium. It tasted like burning oil and moral flexibility. You saw your Primarch once. Rabute Gilliman, the Avenging Sun, built like a cathedral and glowing like someone who always files taxes early. He didn't see you, he saw the formation, but you stood straighter anyway. They said he was your gene father, but you didn't feel fathered. Still, you believed. In the Emperor, in the mission, in the idea that all this pain had a purpose. Because if you stopped believing, even for a second, you might remember what it felt like to be human. And that would be worse. So you kept marching, kept telling yourself that all is well. And for a while, it actually felt like it was working. The Emperor had a plan, the galaxy had a structure, your squad only stabbed each other during training drills. Sure, the Great Crusade was mostly yelling and compliance bullets, but at least it was organized yelling. Then your cousin Legion stopped responding to Vox calls. Then another one showed up to a war zone with a new logo and way too much eyeliner. Then someone whispered, what if Dad's just wrong? And next thing you know, you're getting deployed to remind your own gene brothers what loyalty means with a bolter. But hey, at least you weren't captaining a 10,000-ton warship through a thunderstorm while dodging torpedoes and trying not to disappoint the man who built half the US Navy out of spite. Because that's naval combat, and that's what you get in World of Warships, today's sponsor. This free-to-play tactical game lets you command real US ships like the USS Albany and USS Smith, recreated from actual 20th century blueprints. There are over 40 maps, 7 battle types, and weather that actually changes how you fight. Ships are split into 4 classes. Battleships hit hard and take hits harder. Destroyers are fast, sneaky, and allergic to staying alive. Cruisers do a bit of everything and get blamed when it all goes wrong. And carriers just press buttons from across the map and pretend it's strategy. Right now, there's a 4th of July event running, featuring limited-time US ships, stars and striped skins, and enough firepower to make even new players a threat. So if you want to command actual naval history instead of getting vaporized in a cutscene, click the link in the description or pinned comment, and use code STEPUP to get 7 days premium, 1 million credits, 500 doubloons, USS Albany, and USS Smith for free. It's on PC and console, and unlike many clickbait games, World of Warships is free, so yeah, the only heresy here is not clicking the link. Grab your fleet, claim your rewards, and use code STEPUP while the 4th of July event's still live. Now, back to the cousin-on-cousin trauma. You thought the Xenos were bad? Try explaining betrayal to someone who shares your chin structure and war crimes resume. You were promised unity. What you got was cousin-on-cousin warfare and the galaxy's worst family reunion. One minute, you're chanting war hymns with a guy over a ration brick shaped like guilt. The next, He's across the battlefield wearing the same armor, just slightly moodier, whispering about how the Emperor isn't who he used to be. You shoot him in the throat. He doesn't flinch until the second shot. You don't even know if that counts as heresy or just extremely aggressive disagreement. That's the moment the galaxy flips, and we call it the Horus Heresy, like branding the end of sanity makes it easier to file. Half the legions go full cult core, one Primarch stubs his ego, and suddenly you're being told to reunite at Bolter Point. Horus betrays the Emperor, the Council of Nicaea bans librarians, nobody checks the math on that. Now every third psyker is auditioning for a warp-themed exorcism speedrun, and you're stuck babysitting a chaplain who thinks PTSD is a training opportunity. Your sergeant calls it a civil war, the chaplain calls it divine testing. You just call it Thursday. You're deployed against the Sons of Horus. They don't wear Luna Wolf White anymore, it's a sea green and spite. You recognize one of them. You trained together. On that moon with the servo drones that kept electrocuting people for character, he helped you bury one. You don't bury him, you vaporize what's left, burn the soil, and keep moving. Loyalty used to be simple. Now, the word bearers are quoting scripture mid-stabbing. The Emperor's children turned civilian torture into performance art. The World Eaters gave up grammar entirely and now communicate exclusively through chainsaw decibel levels. One guy in your squad starts muttering about visions. He carves something into his armor and calls it decorative. The chaplain calls it a reason to bring out the flamer. You don't ask questions, you just start cleaning your bolter a little more obsessively. They say the siege of Terra is coming, that the Emperor will make a final stand, that this is the moment that defines the Imperium. You're not so sure. You're currently knee-deep in dead heretics, guarding a trench that smells like burnt prayer scrolls, watching another Thunderhawk crash like divine satire. You reload. You look across the field and lock eyes with another Astartes. Same gait, same armor, same slightly exhausted posture. You shoot first, because if you hesitate, you're next. And just like that, it's no longer about crusades or banners or faith. And before you can catch your breath, the call comes down. Terra is under siege. Time to go home, or what's left of it. This is it, the final stand, the moment that saves humanity. You're not in the throne room, you're not even near it. You're 3 decks down, crawling through sewage tunnels beneath what used to be a museum. Above you, titans fighting like kaiju-sized divorce lawyers. Below, you and 6 exhausted brothers bleeding into trench rot and whispering litanies like they're bug repellent. You hold the line for 13 straight days, not because you're brave, because the Medicae ran out of stims and figured anyone still moving was fine. You fight through traitors, demons, collapsing infrastructure, and your own growing suspicion that maybe this divine plan was more like a group project where everyone died and the Emperor took the credit. Then it happens. They say Horus is dead, that the Emperor lives. You don't feel victorious, you just feel tired. You clean your bolter, again, eat another ration brick shaped like a purity seal, and wait for someone to tell you what's next. Nobody does. The psychers go quiet, the chaplain cries for the first time in his life and pretends it's condensation. The sky looks wrong. You ask if we won, they say the Emperor endures. Which is code for he's been stapled to a throne and wired into the psychic mainframe like a divine Wi-Fi router. You don't see his body, but you saw the aftershocks, the silence, the sermons rewritten mid-sentence, the people too scared to ask what alive really means anymore. They say he chose this, that he's watching. You look around at the broken wall, the shattered squads, the half-dead world you're now responsible for protecting. But there's no time for grief because the traitors, they're not dead, just running. And the Imperium, it's not victorious, it's about to get rebranded. New banners, new rules, same nightmare. The heresy ends on paper, but the cleanup? That's just getting started. They told you Horus was dead, that the Emperor was alive, that the Imperium stood victorious. Then they handed you a flamer and told you to start with your old recruitment planet. This wasn't about justice anymore, this was about optics. The scouring wasn't a war, it was a cleanup. One by one, you chased the traitor legions into the Eye of Terror, world by world, monument by monument. If it bore the wrong colors, burn it. If it quoted the wrong scripture, burn it. If it didn't cheer loud enough during a compliance parade, double burn. You asked if this was still holy work. The chaplain stared at you so long you started reciting litanies out of guilt. You're given a fresh purity seal and told to stop asking questions. You pin it to your chest like it's supposed to keep the memories from leaking out. Spoiler, it doesn't. The Codex Astartes gets introduced, which splits legions into chapters to prevent another Horus trading might for control. Gilliman writes it, and by rights, We mean data dumps 500 pages of passive-aggressive war rules and calls it divine structure. Your job now includes checklists. You used to charge into battle with a chainsword and a scream. Now you submit a formation request and wait for bolter clearance. You lose your first friend to deviation. He wore his old Legion tattoo one day too long. Then say he retired. You find his helmet in the supply bin 2 weeks later. Sometimes, in the silence between deployments, you find yourself whispering their names. The ones they made you burn, the ones they made you forget. You say them in low Gothic, quiet, just once, then delete them again. Because in the Imperium, memory is a liability. But paperwork? Paperwork is sacred now. And your Legion? Not a Legion anymore. Now it's a chapter. Same colors, fewer brothers, more mandatory war chants. Some of your squad got reassigned. Some volunteered to start new chapters. One vanished mid-briefing and came back with a different name and a promotion. No one asked questions, you just called him brother and pretended the old name didn't echo. There were no more glorious crusade charges. Now it's tactical engagement pattern gamma tertius, approved by middle management and blessed by bureaucracy. You used to win battles by instinct. Now you win them by PowerPoint. Your captain starts quoting subclauses mid-fight. Your sergeant carries a purity checklist. You find yourself missing the days when you just punched heretics and prayed after. Your chapter gets a new chaplain. He's younger than your helmet. Quotes doctrine like slam poetry. Calls the emperor the first spreadsheet. You laugh, then realize he's serious, and then cry a little. Silently, because emotion is still considered a soft mutation. You fight in a dozen more crusades, against orcs, Eldar, and things so weird the administratum hasn't named them yet. You lose brothers, you gain honors, but you forget what the honors were for. Sometimes you see the others, the new chapters. They share your gene seed, not your memories. You used to feel like a sword. Now you just feel heavier. And I don't mean emotional baggage. Okay, maybe I do. I can't be your narrator and your therapist, so like, this one's on you. But hey, that's just aging, right? According to the Codex, you're still combat effective. And if you're not, well, the Imperium has a plan for that too. You just get repurposed, so you keep going. Decades blur, wars change names, enemies respawn with new hats. And you've been at war for centuries, or at least it feels like that. You stopped counting somewhere around your 20th compliance campaign, or your 8th crusade. Or maybe it was that one skirmish where your arm got vaporized and the tech marine reattached it using incense, duct tape, and what might have been faith. Point is, you're still here. And honestly, you're starting to think that is the punishment. The galaxy keeps changing. New Xenos, new cults, new ways to scream in languages your auto-translator actively censors for morale reasons. You once fought a creature that wasn't born in real space. Your captain called it a demon. You called it Tuesday, because Thursdays already got booked. The warp storms get worse. Time fractures. One mission takes 2 hours for you, 12 years for everyone else. You return to base and find out your chapter already mourned you, replaced you, and assigned your bunker to a servitor named Clanky. Clanky snores loudly. You fight alongside newer recruits now. Primaris, shinier, taller. Built like bad decisions in power armor. They're polite, efficient, soulless. You don't hate them, you just hate that they still believe. Your chaplain starts mumbling during sermons. Your apothecary stops naming the dead and starts assigning serial numbers. You haven't prayed in 38 standard cycles. Not because you lost faith, you just ran out of new material. Sometimes you dream about your old squad. Sometimes you see them on the battlefield. Problem is, you're pretty sure they've been dead for 400 years. You ask the librarian if that's normal. He says, define normal. Then his nose starts bleeding. You reload, you fight, you keep going. Because you're a space marine. You don't get to stop. You barely remember getting reassigned to this new warp mission. 1 minute you're patching up a bolter with duct tape and sarcasm. The next, you're staring out at a pothole at a space that's technically illegal to look at for too long. Great, warp travel again. You've done this before, hundreds of times. You've got the whole routine down. Recite the litanies, bless the toilet, don't make eye contact with the bulkhead if it starts pulsing. But this time, no screams, no visions, just vibes. Bad ones. You tell yourself it's fine. Maybe the Geller field just feels extra cursed today. Maybe it's normal for the Medicaid station to hum in harmony with your heartbeat. Maybe the bolter is supposed to whisper your name when you're not holding it. You ask the chaplain. He tells you the Emperor protects, then forgets your name, then blesses a vending machine, so you stop asking. Instead, you do what you've always done. Clean your gear, ignore the walls exhaling like they've got lungs. You start dreaming weird again, not scary, just familiar. Too familiar. You see old battlefields you don't remember fighting on. dead brothers saying things you definitely never said, except it still feels like you said them. You chalk it up to stress, or time dilation, or the emotional equivalent of filing taxes for 900 years straight. The warp doesn't scream this time, it sighs. Like it's been watching you this whole time and finally went, okay, buddy, you've earned a break. And the worst part? You almost believe it. That the whispering's done, that the worst is over, that you'll finally get to rest. But nope, you wake up to another drop pod, another flame briefing, another heresy. Okay, now you've been fighting for a long time. Like, a long time. You're not sure how long exactly because time has gotten weird. Could be a few centuries, could be brunch. All you know is the bolter still works, the mission isn't over, and some shiny new Primaris just called you ancient like it was a compliment. You keep getting honored, medals, blessings, purity seals stapled to your chest like divine participation trophies. You haven't taken your armor off in ever, but that's fine. Astartes don't retire, they just get louder when they breathe. Then there's the new guy, wide-eyed, fresh gene seed, looks at you like your history class with a pulse. Says something like, "It's an honor to serve beside you, ancient. What's it like being awake?" You laugh. Except you don't. Your Vox speaker clicks, the kid salutes and walks away, thinking he heard divine static. You sit there wondering when your voice stopped working. You chalk it up to warp trauma. Maybe spiritual compression. Maybe the armor is just extra creaky today. You've been through worse. Like that one battle you half remember, where your chest plate got split open, and your legs stopped working, and someone whispered, "We can still use him." Then nothing. Anyway, no time to dwell. There's heresy to extinguish. Mid-battle, mid-flamethrower burst, you turn toward a shattered wall panel. It reflects just enough light for you to see a sarcophagus, wired up like a cathedral fuse box, fists the size of jet bikes, legs bolted to a mech frame, your frame. Oh. Huh. You're a dreadnought. Okay, cool. Cool. That explains a lot. The memory gaps, the voice delay, the weird dreams, the fact that you haven't blinked since the Horus Heresy. You were expecting a dramatic reveal. Choirs, maybe. Instead, it's just you, your reflection, and the slow realization that you've been kind of dead for 300 years and still not on break. You nod to yourself. Or at least the sarcophagus nods. Close enough. You're a space marine. Now you're a very expensive microwave that punches tanks.